Good afternoon, children. Today, for English, we're learning about quantifiers. Now, quantifiers are basically words that tells us how much or how many, right? Basically, the quantity of things. Now, for this lesson, all right, we are focusing mainly on the definition. That means what quantifiers are and how do we actually use them in our sentences. Here we have 4 quantifiers, all right, for this big book on bad dreams. We have managed to find out that there are actually 4 quantifiers being used in the story. So we're going to look deeper into these quantifiers and see how we can use it, all right, in our own sentences. Firstly, we have many. Next, we have little, no, and all. Now, for the quantifier many, it actually tells us that there is a lot in quantity. Little tells us that there is very few in quantity. No tells us that there is nothing, zero in quantity. And lastly, all, meaning everything. Let's look at more examples and the meaning, all right, of quantifiers. So what are quantifiers? Let's look at it again. It is actually a word or phrase used before a noun to show the amount of something. 3 examples to help you understand it better. First one, we use the quantifier some for the uncountable noun rice. Alright, rice cannot be counted. So we are using the quantifier some to actually tells us how much rice is there. Next, we have the quantifier a few to quantify the noun sweets. And we have many as the quantifier to quantify the number of people. So we say there are many people in the shopping mall. Now, before we continue, now as you've heard about what I mentioned just now in the previous screen, if you heard me, you will be able to remember that I say rice is an uncountable noun. So we're going to use the quantifier some. So which means that the quantifier that we're going to use actually depends on whether the noun can be counted or not. So let's do an activity, a simple one, alright, to recap on what you have learned in primary 1 about countable and uncountable nouns. Now, what are countable nouns? Countable nouns are basically things that we can count, and uncountable nouns are things that we cannot count. Let's read all these nouns that are given here so that we can proceed with the activity to group them into 2 groups. Before we start the activity, maybe you would like to have a piece of blank paper or a whiteboard to help you write down your answers. You may pause the video to go and look for your paper or your whiteboard before coming back and continuing with the activity. Alright, let's start reading these nouns together. Okay? We have flour, ruler, rice, shoe, pen, money, table, air, hair, book, sand, eraser, water, and lastly, hat. Again, you may pause the video to write down the answers on your piece of blank paper or whiteboard. Divide it into 2 columns left and right by drawing this line, the center line, and writing down all these nouns into the correct columns. Pause the video and do it now. Once you're done, let's check. Have you placed the nouns in the correct columns? Let's look at the countable nouns first. For countable nouns, first we have ruler. We can count ruler. I will say Alvin has 2 rulers in his pencil case. Next we have shoe, pen, table, book, hat, and eraser. Now, one rule that we can use to determine or to decide if the nouns can be counted or not. To do that, we can tell ourselves, if I put a number before the noun, example, I put the number 4 beside the noun pen, it will read as 4 pens. So if the noun is a countable noun, we can put a number before the noun, and if it doesn't sound right, then it probably is an uncountable noun. Let's do the test under the column for uncountable nouns. Let's look at flour. If I put a number before the noun flour, do we say, I have 2 flour? Or I am going to put 3 flour into the bowl? It doesn't sound right, does it? Because we used something, alright, to quantify flour. We will say uncountable nouns will need something to quantify. For example, I said, I need 3 cups of flour. So we're using the cups, the number of cups, to quantify the amount of flour that we need. So in this case, if we are not able to put a number just right before the noun, the uncountable noun, then put a number before the noun, sorry, then that noun is uncountable. Let's look at the next one. Rice, air, hair, water, sand, money. A few of you may be asking, Mrs. Tan, how come money can't be counted? I can count money. You're right that we can count money, but we count money based on its value. Like we say, I have $10 in my piggy bank. $10 is not the quantity, but it is the value of money that you have in your piggy bank. Alright? So we are not able to count money as in I have 1 money, 2 money, 3 money, and so on. So money is actually an uncountable noun. Moving on, I have more examples to show you. Alright, let's look at the quantifier little. We use little to show that the amount is not enough. We use little with uncountable nouns. Like, there is very little water left in my cup. This is to tell us that little means not enough water in my cup. Next, we can use the quantifier little in this example, that man has little hair, meaning the man has very few, alright, hair, and he has little hair on his head. Or you can say, I have little money left in my wallet, meaning I do not have enough money in my wallet with me today. So for little, we use it with uncountable nouns, and therefore we cannot use little with countable nouns. Example, Mary has little books. Now for books, books can be counted, so we do not use little with countable nouns. Instead, we say Mary has a few books. So a few is going to be the quantifier to tell us how many books there are. There are a few. Next example, Joe has little pens. Do we say that to our friends? No, we don't, okay? Instead, we say Joe has a few pens. So we use a few with countable nouns. Next, the quantifier many. Now we cannot use many with uncountable nouns. Example, I don't say the rich man has many money. I say the rich man has a lot of money. And I don't say that girl has many hair. I say that girl has a lot of hair. Lastly, I wouldn't say I drink many water. I would say I drink a lot of water. So you see, in the past 5 to 7 minutes, all right, we have learned, all right, how to use quantifiers in different contexts depending on the nature of the noun, whether it is countable or uncountable. So lastly, which quantifier to use if some of you might still have the question in your mind? Two things to remember. First, we will identify the noun in a sentence. After that, we will determine means we will decide if the noun is countable or uncountable. Then we will decide on the use of the correct quantifier. Let's look at two more examples. Mason had very little rice left in his bowl. Manage to identify that rice is the noun and it is uncountable. So I will use the quantifier little to quantify how much rice is left in Mason's bowl. Next one and last one. There are many people in this shopping mall. Again, I identified the noun people, and I know people is a countable noun. I will use the quantifier many to go with my countable noun people to tell me how is the crowd like in the shopping mall. There are many people in the shopping mall. Alright, with this short lesson, I hope that you have learned, alright, what quantifiers are and how to actually use the quantifier in a sentence correctly. Now, not to worry if you still have questions in your mind. We are going to do a little pop quiz, alright, just like how we do in class, to actually be able to know and apply the use of what we have learned here. Alright, are you ready? If you're ready, stop the video and let's move on to the next part of the lesson.